Kelly Bos. I'd like to present Overcoming Together, a series on wellness through uncertainty. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm currently back in Canada, but I had a practice in the British Virgin Islands for a number of years, and I've had the pleasure and honor of continuing to provide some support mental health-wise. And certainly during these last few difficult years, we really wanted to put something together that people could use to manage uncertainty and difficult times. So we hope you find this useful, and please check out the link below. Today we're meeting with Dr. Virginia Rubaine. Thank you so much for meeting with us today to talk about, handling uncertainty. I'm just going to give a little bit of your bio first before I get started and kind of lean on your wisdom there. So you're a native Virgin Islander and always really valued education, it sounds like. So it sounds like after high school you headed to Baltimore and worked on your undergrad in psych at Morgan State University. And then you went to Nova Southeastern University in Fort Lauderdale, received your master's, and then went on to the clinical psychology program to get your doctorate in clinical psychology. Yeah. And then came back to serve your community. And now you're currently employed by the BVI Health Services as authority as a director of mental health services. And you wear a lot of hats in this, I think, and you connect with a lot of people. So you have a unique opportunity of working with the community and working with government, local and international agencies, doing mental health policies and legislation. And I know you love to travel and you love mentoring the future leaders of the Virgin Islands. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you and I met years ago when we were both practicing therapy on the island. I think Dr. June Samuel had a group of us together. So, and we were both working out of the same office. We never really overlapped too much, but we did see each other sometimes. Yeah, we would pass, right, in the hall, whatever. Yeah, so nice to see you again. Really nice. And it's just so important when we're talking about uncertainty and all the things that have been going on to talk a little bit about mental health in this, right? Because it does get affected. So we really want to talk to you and get your expertise. And I guess my first question is, like, what have you noticed and what challenges have you seen for BVI Islanders, specifically, I guess, post-Irma, but also COVID-19. And of course, we know that Irma wasn't the only thing happening. So maybe you could give a little bit of background to what you were experiencing, what you were noticing with others for challenges.
Okay, so just to take us back to 2017, our disasters began with the floods. Right. We call it the floods of 2017. And then Irma Maria came. So we had Hurricanes Irma and Maria with kind of Jose sandwich in between. And for the past 2 years after the storm, we were trying to rebuild and get back to our newish normal. And I think the temperature at the end of 2019 was like, woo,
we're through.
These 2 years are over, right? We're rebuilding, things are getting back to normal. And then here comes COVID. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, we had a bit of denial and magical thinking. Right. Where I know I was saying, oh, well, it's in China and that's so far away. We don't have to worry about it here. And then when it came to the Western Hemisphere, it was like, well, we're a small, tiny territory. It's not going to come here. And then March came and it was in your face. And that was when we had our first lockdown.
Yes.
And I was in denial, I'll be honest. I did not prepare for the lockdown. I was like, oh, I have enough food to get me through the next 3 days.
Right.
And we ended up being locked in for 3 weeks. And as a result, I ended up being one of the persons out there with my sword and shield fighting to get some food.
Yeah.
And what struck me while I was there in the line with my mother, I had brought my mother with me, was how internal people's perspectives had become. You know, after Irma and Maria, we were more community minded. We were a lot more sensitive to the needs of others and what was happening in our community. Right. And I think because Irma, you know, the storm came, the damage happened, we understood what had happened, we knew what the damage was, and there was no question about what needed to be done. I think the difference with COVID is I'm standing here in this line to go into the grocery store, but I don't know the person's status next to me. And I think because we've had so much trauma, so many crises, so many disasters, I think people are just desensitized now.
Yeah.
You know, and what was it? Friday evening, we had an earthquake and it was pretty loud and it was pretty long.
Yeah.
And I'm so over it all. I just messaged my friend and I said, can you just look out in the ocean and see if Godzilla is out there? Because I can't be bothered.
Clearly that's next.
Like,
yes.
Right. I expect to see Godzilla and Mothra fighting out in the ocean because it's like you can't think of anything else that could possibly go wrong.
Absolutely.
So I think that people are a lot more internally focused. So it makes them less compassionate and less aware of what's happening with others around them. And so there's a irritability or a underlying tension that I didn't perceive during the hurricane, in the aftermath of the hurricane.
Right. So it's this kind of like, maybe the hurricane felt even more that we're all in this together, where COVID hasn't been as clear. Like it hasn't been as clear on how people are feeling or experiencing it, or how prepared or ill prepared they are.
Yeah. And I'm very worried. I'm very worried about our adolescent and child population. I think they have probably been the ones that have been the greatest impacted by this. Like, they went on holiday from school and never got to go back. Like, their entire world has been changed. And it's even worse because they were the ones that were most negatively impacted by the storms.
Yep.
They had their school structures destroyed. And for some students, they have never been able to go back to school the way that they remembered school being. So I'm particularly concerned for our child and adolescent population because a lot of parents are keeping them at home. So you query what's happening with them socially. And now we're not quite sure what's going to happen with the upcoming school year because we're seeing what's happening in America where they opened and then they had to close because of the outbreak of COVID. So I think things are still very confusing for them, particularly the little ones who have to do the online instruction. I'm a kindergartner. I just learned to poop and pee on my own. Now you want me to sit and manipulate technology. So I think that our kids have been the worst impacted by all of these crises that we've been seeing.
So here you are, you've got your own stuff, right? As a person living there, experiencing your own stress, experiencing your own food shortage to go out and deal with, experiencing your own heightened probably awareness when things like hurricane reports come out, or things, watching storms, or even an earthquake happens. You've got your own stuff, and then you go and you have to support other people, which is a challenge and not something usual. And I've been reflecting about this a fair bit myself as a therapist. It's rare that you go through something at the same time. I mean, you as a professional may also have an addictions background or family issues or things that you could maybe relate, but not necessarily you're working on at the exact same time, you know, to this extreme amount, right? So where everybody's kind of feeling the same thing and having the same issues. And, you know, this would have been true for Irma on the island and all the other disasters around that, as well as with COVID. So how do you talk to families, part one, and part two, how do you do your own self-care in it?
Well, I'll answer part two first, and then I'll go to part one.
Mm-hmm.
After this, my house, my newly built house that I hadn't moved into yet, I was just getting ready to move to, got destroyed by the storm.
Oh.
And if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, because I was spearheading the UNICEF response, disaster response here in the Virgin Islands, I did not have the time to attend to my own house.
Yeah.
And I could remember like 2-3 months after the storm going to the Red Cross to get some tarps because I hadn't even secured my house. And I get there and one of the ladies says, "But Dr. Rubaine, what do you mean you don't have any tarps? You know, it's 3 months after." And I say, "Yeah, it's been raining in my house for 3 months while I attend to other people."
Yes.
And that's one of the things, one of the sacrifices you make as a first responder.
Yeah.
You know, when you get into a helping profession, whether you're an EMT, a doctor, a nurse, a psychologist, whatever it is that you do, police officer, when you take that oath, you are agreeing that you're going to put the needs of the community before your own. And it was really, really stressful because I'm working, but I'm wondering, like, has raccoons moved into my house? Because I don't have the time or the wherewithal. Because remember, we didn't have any electricity. We had a curfew. So it wasn't even like I could finish working and go and
get
attend
over
to
there.
my
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, you just have to leave yourself for last if you're going to be effective. But eventually you have to take time.
Right.
And so that's what I
left to give.
Right. So I ended up taking huge swatches of time so that I could deal with my own stuff. But I was only allowed to do that because I have a wonderful team of people that I work with that even when I'm not there, the train keeps going.
Yes.
So I'm very blessed in that respect. How do you talk to families? You know what? It's really on a case-by-case basis because each family has their own challenges. Directly after the storm, I really focused my attentions on children and adolescents because I think with adults, you know, going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if they don't have those bottom tiers of the pyramid attended to, food, shelter, security, there's very little you can do for them psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I focus my attention on teachers and students. So I spend a lot of time doing interventions with our public and private school teachers. And then we were instrumental in getting the Return to Happiness program, which is the UNICEF PFA program for kids. Yeah. So we focused our attention on that with the idea being that the kids would bring the intervention home to the parents. And that's how we would get mom and dad. And that was very effective. That was very effective. Yeah. I think people are still recovering from the storms. That's my working hypothesis. I think, you know, you're driving around and you're still seeing homes that were completely destroyed, and some of them are now just being repaired 3 years later. I think now when we get warnings about storms, it's just like, whatever. People are desensitized. Like when you face what you faced with those storms, you're just like,
what can I do?
Exactly. You know, if Godzilla and Mothra are in the sea fighting, there's nothing I can do about it. So I think people have detached in that respect. And I think it really informs their response to COVID. Because when I drive around town and I see people not engaging in social distancing, I see people not wearing their masks, I see parties where I know it's impossible for them to social distance, I say to myself, these people have given up the ghost. They've given up the ghost because I think they feel very helpless. I think they
Yeah.
feel like, you know what? No matter what I do, it's going to be some kind of crap. So might as well I have fun.
Yeah, that's a hard place to be in, for sure.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Have you heard stories of hope and resilience that have really inspired you during this time? I mean, there's probably just unbelievable things that people have traversed in all this. So has there been stories or situations or community partnerships that have really inspired you during this time?
I think the unsung heroes in all of this have been kids.
Right.
You know, on the rare occasion that I do see them, because now they're scarce, you really don't encounter them
Right.
the way that
Yeah,
they
I guess
used
not.
to,
Yeah.
because parents are being very cautious.
Mm-hmm.
But they're so hopeful, they're so happy.
Mm-hmm. They live in the
look
moment.
forward to, yes, they enjoy what is happening in the present. I have a 9-year-old niece that spends every weekend with her grandma, and she's always like super happy. Like they go in the garden, they do activities together, but their favorite activity is watching all the Marvel movies together.
Right.
And invariably, they will call me to ask me, like, what did I think about Doctor Strange? And she said Captain America is boring. And I just look at the pure joy on her face, and I'm like, dude, you don't know if you're ever going to see your friends again, but you're still happy.
Yeah.
Am I complaining? You know?
Yeah.
So I look to them. I look to them to keep that hope and to keep that exuberance about life, because my opinion, my life is coming to an end, and theirs is just beginning. And the world as we know it is completely upside down. Like you have no idea what's gonna happen next. It's just, as you say, a time of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of adults really worried about things like vaccines, the US election, whether I'll ever get to see my grandma again or see this person again. Should I risk going to New York to a doctor's appointment and possibly contracting COVID?
Right.
So you've definitely seen the anxiety for adults increase. I think the elderly are particularly vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they've lived through a lot of things, but never this. Unless they were around for the 1918 Spanish flu. They've lived through a lot of things, and we saw a lot of elderly deaths after the storm.
Right.
From natural causes, but it's my working hypothesis that they just gave up.
Yeah.
You know, it was just too much.
And the stress.
So I think, I just spoke to my grandmother yesterday. She lives in St. Thomas, where they have like, I don't even know how many active infections now. And Granny's like the happiest person in the world. And I'm like, dude, why are you so happy?
Right. Know? So you're looking to your elders and the youth for the inspiration.
Yeah. And she's just happy. Like she's talking about the election. She's asking me about my garden. In the meantime, she's a prisoner in her own home. You know?
Yeah.
I guess because her needs are being met. So she's happy.
Yeah.
But then you have other seniors who maybe they're living in a nursing home and the nursing home is quarantined, so they can't see their loved ones. I just spoke to a really good friend. Her mom is in a nursing home in the States and she can't get to see her.
Oh,
and it was a tradition for her to go and visit every summer. Yeah. And now mom is not doing well, but she can't go, you know? So it's difficult.
Well, and as you say, there's these realistic worries, right? Like some is like the sort of distorted thinking about things, like, you know, worrying about catching it when there's very low cases and thinking just because you went outside, you're going to catch it. Like that might be a bit distorted, but there's also the realistic things like, how is this going to, you know, play out? Like concerns about seeing family members that you can't see. And so I think as a therapist, you're navigating both real concerns and some things where that kind of goes beyond that, where we're not looking at realistic concerns anymore. But sometimes there's, you know, like I know that one day I'm going to die. That's realistic. I'm going to die. but so that's a realistic thought, but it's not helpful to think about that every day, right? I could spend every day thinking, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. You know, it's that managing realistics and the thought distortions, and we all do it, and we all get lots of those thoughts throughout our day. And then knowing when to challenge a thought and knowing when to just problem solve. And so that's probably what you're seeing a lot with clients, is sometimes saying, okay, yes, it's a problem, but is it helpful to think about that right now? Or what can we do? What are some pros we can do? So, I mean,
Right.
so helpful that you're there supporting people. I'm sure, you know, the community is probably so grateful to have you. Any final thoughts? Anything to encourage people about walking through uncertainty?
I think the best thing for dealing with uncertainty is to be as authentic as possible. And you just summarized this so wonderfully, like the distorted cognition. Does it really make sense to think about this right now? Realistically, what are my options?
Right.
But just being really honest about what's happening with you.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that COVID has brought to the forefront for a lot of people is the wellness or lack thereof of their relationships. And I think that's another stressor, and dealing with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so people have had to face a lot of hard truths that they were avoiding for a multitude of reasons. And now COVID has come and ripped the Band-Aid off of a lot of things. Yeah. So I think the best thing people could do is be really brutally honest with themselves about where they are emotionally, where they are psychologically, what resources they have available to them, and really surrounding themselves with a support network. That is so important.
So important.
Having people that you could talk with. You may not be able to socialize the way that you used to. Right.
Somebody you can call a girlfriend and tell her to look into the ocean for you and say, is Godzilla here? That's how you get support.
Godzilla and Mothra, because I was just too tired to look. And of course she laughed hysterically, but I was serious. The way 2020 is going, it's like, okay, that's just part of the course. Absolutely. So having a social support network is so important during these times, and people that you can rely on. So that's what I would absolutely encourage people to do. For parents with children, when I was little, and I'm going to age myself, we had encyclopedias.
Yeah, I remember.
And Encyclopedia Britannica used to have the craft alive books. Remember that?
Yeah.
They were awesome. I just knew I was going to grow up to be some kind of crafty person. Anywho, what I liked about those books is that they were so creative and imaginative in the things that you could do. And I encourage parents to do that with their kids, Right. Okay, baby, you can't take them to the movies, but you could create movie night at home.
Yeah.
You
do something
could
together.
Teach them how. Right. So let's go out in the garden. Like all the rave down here now are home gardens. Like,
yes. Here too.
Kids, let's work on our food security. Let's grow something. Let's get closer to Mother Nature and touch the earth. I've been recommending that quite a bit with a lot of success. Kids love it. They absolutely love it. So I would say to parents, you get to leave the house every day and interact, and you have to think about the kids. They're home. They've been home now for like 6-7 months.
Yeah.
And so you have to attend to their needs as well, their social needs.
Yeah, I know a lot of families are looking at the busyness that they couldn't keep going during COVID, and really, as you say, taking stock, making changes, like how do we really want to live our lives? What resources do we have, as you said, looking at our relationships. I think that's really important advice. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. This is fantastic. I'll just be so happy to share with everyone your thoughts today. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me, Kelly, and I hope to see you soon.
Yes, we'll have to connect soon. Whenever it opens up one day, I'm going to come back.
Awesome.
Have a great day. Take care. I want to welcome Sharia de Castro today. Sharia is a dedicated educator that's making a real difference in youth development in the Virgin Islands. She has an education background quite extensive in Montessori studies. She also went to the Texas Christian University, and she went to H. Levitti Stout for community college. She currently serves as the CEO of Learn and Play, and I'll get Sharia to tell us a little bit more about that. And she's an elementary teacher at Century House Montessori School in the British Virgin Islands. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me today, Sharia.
It is my pleasure. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. So maybe you tell me a little bit about Learn and Play.
Okay, so Learn and Play is something I developed as an educator, wanting to be able to, outside of my classroom in the wider community, facilitate an environment where children learn. And I believe that children learn best through purposeful play. And so using manipulative, using tools, and preparing that in a way that children are able to learn best in a hands-on way. And so that is my primary focus, to be able to provide these manipulative and tools to families and even teachers to help them along, but then also to be able to aid parents in any type of individual assistance they may need with their children, and even in terms of tutoring as well.
And you have you have a daughter as well?
I do. I have a 6-year-old, Anaya.
Fantastic. Okay. So maybe you could tell me, I'm just wondering, because we're doing this series just talking about kind of overcoming uncertainty and how we can help our children and youth. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, after post-Irma and now with the COVID, what kind of challenges you're seeing for the kids that you serve and educate, as well as the parents. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because there's been probably a lot of bit of homeschooling, some things done, and a lot of pivoting for people while they're trying to figure out what the next week will look like. So could you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've seen?
So I think the adjustment to homeschooling was certainly a big leap. It was quite a change. But I would say that I do believe most people managed to make the transition as best as they could.
Right.
And I think because it was our duty to support our students and our parents to make sure that that transition was as easy as possible. And so one of the things that we saw there was a huge disruption in their regular routine. And so we tried to encourage parents to get a routine at home, try your best to stick to it, but understand that every day won't be the same, because now you're homeschooling children in an environment where it isn't typical for learning. And so they would need those moments where they wake up today and it probably won't be the best walking day, but that's okay. And allowing them to walk in a way that is comfortable but still productive. I think one of the things that, yes, there was a huge need for balance even as we continue onward. And then understanding that even though we're focusing and catering to the academic needs of children, we're also thinking about their mental and emotional as well. So we had to make sure to provide that balance in terms of understanding where they are. Just as we are feeling it as adults, the uncertainty is looming, it's heavy, they are feeling it as well, and they just act themselves in a different way. So to be mindful of that and try to support them as best as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you talk to kids about uncertainty? Because that can be difficult for parents and educators. Like we have our own stuff going on, and then the kids have their stuff. So it's a difficult conversation, isn't it?
It is a difficult conversation, but I do think it's a necessary one. Mm-hmm. One of the things I try to tell persons when I'm speaking about children is that children are whole beings. We like to think of them as these little people who have to grow up and then they'll eventually be this whole being. And that's not true. They're born as whole beings with feelings, with dreams, with visions, with goals. They grow over time, but they're already whole. And so we ought to treat them like that. And just as we're going through, they're going through. And so it may be a simple conversation to start the day. How are you feeling? If you're feeling overwhelmed, understanding, giving them that support that, okay, I do understand it's a very unusual time. It's difficult for mommy as well, but yes, I'm here to support you. And just making sure that there's an open line of communication so that children feel safe speaking about their fears. And then once they've done that, accommodating them in a way that you are supporting them through that.
Have you had some tips that you found parents have found really useful during this time for doing the homeschooling? Like, are there some things that practical things that you suggest to parents quite regularly?
I did. One of the main ones for me was making sure they set up a workspace at home for the child. Even if it's a table, or it could be a beanbag in a cozy corner, but wherever it was, that space was set up so that once it was time to walk, the child knew that they could go there and it meant that it was time to walk. And also having something personal put up in that space so that it felt memorable for them, and they knew whether it was a painting, a sewing, something that they felt like they put there to help to personalize the space would also help to make it a little bit more cozy for them. Because we have to understand that for them, home isn't about learning, typically, not as it has been over the last several months. So we would have had to find ways to make it comfortable for them in a way that they could be engaged. And it also helps parents to be able to keep an eye on them. It has to be in a space that was visible to mommy and daddy, especially parents who are working from at home as well. And then also trying to create a routine where they did most of their academic work in the morning period, and then giving the afternoon more time for family time, games, more interactive, go for an outdoor walk, nature walk, things of that sort. I would suggest to make sure that they're still getting activity outside of the home as well, especially cooking. For example, in my classroom, every week we would do our Zoom classes, and we had a schedule of cross-curricular activities that were going into the sciences, language, math, and by Friday it would always take them into the kitchen to cook or bake, as we would do in the classroom.
Practical life, yes.
Yeah.
Did you have
classroom is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you had much feedback, like from parents that are, finding that they're maybe putting a lot of pressure on themselves? Like, are you sort of having to do some of that? It's okay if you don't get it done, or encourage those that are really having a hard time getting going?
Very much so. One of the things that I told parents is they are not going to ruin their child's lives in a few months. It's not as educators to get them back on track once we have them back in the classroom. We just needed some interim support at home. So I told them all the time, we're not pressuring you, we're here to support you however we can help, we're here to do that. But I think they needed that reassurance as well, because they were typically thrown into a pool and asked to just swim and get there. And it was impossible for them to do that without having teachers as almost like life jackets supporting them through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. We just need interim support. That's a nice non-pressured way to put it. Sure, that's great.
Because I keep seeing a lot of posts on social media saying that children are behind and oh my gosh, and I just don't believe that. As an educator, I know that sometimes life happens, and as in the real world, we teach children according to where they are, and right now their emotional needs surpass anything else. And so thankfully, we were able, through online education, to be able to reach them academically as well. But it was important to strike a balance and for parents to understand that your children are not behind terribly, that they can't catch up. It's the curriculum. We'll address it once we're back in the classroom.
Yeah, it's that being a little bit flexible, right? That's great. What inspiring stories have either you heard personally or from your students that have helped you during these difficult times? Like, are some stories or some tales of resilience come up for you that have been really helpful?
I think watching how well the children adjusted to being independent. They're already independent learners in the classroom, and I see it every day, but parents don't get to. And so it was a huge eye-opener for their parents to see them working at home and seeing how they function every day in the classroom. Lots of my parents were really blown away by that. It's one thing when we share the Montessori way, for example, but it's another thing when they witness it every single day. So I'm very happy that the children were able to spend that time at home with parents. Another thing that came out of it was the significant amount of family time that parents have been able to enjoy during these difficult times, and just taking greater joy in the little things that we tend to take for granted sometimes, and appreciating those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you looking forward to this fall?
I am looking forward to seeing my students for sure, seeing them face to face, of course, in the safest possible way. So we have been working to prepare the environment to make sure that it is.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be super happy to be back in the environment. I will be as well. And I'm just looking forward to see how we continue to implement and move education forward, because I think COVID gave us the opportunity to, for example, involve technology in education in a way that we haven't been able to do before. And so I don't think moving forward, it's getting rid of the technology and moving back to what it was. I think it's going to be it's going to be an amazing thing if we can do a mixture of the two and transform education going forward.
Absolutely. And I guess too, if, anything, heaven forbid, but if there's second waves or there's a hurricane season that's difficult to traverse, then you're sort of ready, like, how to do it this time. Like you've had, unfortunately, a lot of practice of being resilient. So you will know how to move forward.
I think that's one of the main things. I mean, as people on a whole, the huge adjustment to change. Virgin Islanders, everyone living here in the BVI, we dealt with Irma, and now we're going through COVID. We say we are very resilient people, and that is so true. And I think now we get to benefit from that in terms of putting, as teachers, I saw a meme on Facebook a few days ago that says every teacher is going back into the classroom as a first year teacher this year.
I can see that, yeah.
But thankfully, we do have that experience from the last few months to step into this new year. And although we're preparing for in-person learning, we're also making sure we have a backup plan, as you said, if a second wave were to come, that we're very prepared to resume Zoom lessons or Google Classroom or whatever it takes to make sure that children are still learning.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and also chat with you. And really, I could see the passion that you have for your work. So very lucky students that you're returning to, and I'm sure you feel very blessed by them as well. So thanks so much for chatting.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelly.
My pleasure. Hello, thanks so much for tuning into this segment. Today we are talking with Terri Benjamin. She's been working over a decade as a holistic raw vegan nutritionist, and she's been working in the BVI specifically on that for the last 6 years. She's also had to recently pivot her business with all the changes and uncertainty post-Irma, and she's also very passionate with working with new moms on their postpartum health. Welcome. Thanks for coming today, Terri.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure, Terri. Terri and I go way back, so I remember meeting her in the early days of Chic Gourmet when she was selling amazing sugar-free, gluten-free options, and I remember buying a birthday cake for my daughter. So, and then didn't we have a chaotic delivery day where you thought I was in another end of the island, and anyways, we figured it out. But we've kept in contact since, and I've watched Terri's business grow and change and pivot, and really just wanted to talk to her today about, all this pivot, the resilience that she's had to show. And Terri, maybe you could tell me a little bit about, post-Irma, COVID-19, like how have these things affected you personally and your business?
Well, it was a bit of a shock for me because at first I really did not know what to do. Like, it was so traumatizing. I was faced with losing everything because I had invested all my savings into my business. So I had like nothing left. And for me, that was it was very, very traumatic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Losing your entire savings in just a matter of a week. Like, not even a week, because Irma hit, I think she hit on the 17th of September, if memory serves me correct. No. I think it was early. Yeah, it was early September.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I want to say
like, yeah, around there. And she just decimated everything. And I was like, I can't believe this. Like, it was a lot to process that everything was gone, everything. And then we had damage to my home, like the roof and half of the windows, one side of the home was damaged, and we had flooding. And so it was very traumatic, losing everything. Well, we didn't lose everything. I mean, we were still alive. My family was fine. My mom was okay. So, but just all the material things and my savings, like, yeah, it was really rough.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, you know, going forward, you had to make some pivots with your business, some pretty big ones. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So since I didn't have like clients locally, like all my clients had left, and those that were still here, like no one was in any condition to purchase anything or anything like that.
Survival mode, right?
So, yeah. So I just decided to move everything online, and I decided to split my business into two. So I currently have two businesses. One where I focus on my postpartum moms healing, and the other is just like the nutritional part, the food part, which is Chic Gourmet. So I just focus on the wellness and nutrition part generally for everyone, and the other aspect is just specifically for postpartum moms.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, it's great that you were able to pivot. It shows your resilience and able to push through and coming up with new strategies. A lot of people are talking about pivots, and probably a lot of people listening can really relate to the, you know, sudden shock of losing so much after Irma and trying to figure out a new way forward. So it's, and I think a lot of people are experiencing a lot of stress. Like, what are your top tips for dealing with stress, and how nutrition might be able to help with that?
Nutrition is very important as it relates with stress. And honestly speaking, after Irma and now with the whole COVID-19, the only stable thing for me was and is my nutrition.
Right.
Because nutrition, it helps your stress level. Because during times of disasters and stuff like COVID and hurricanes and those type of things, adrenaline is produced, and adrenaline is produced during intense stress. And it gives you a burst of energy initially, but then your blood sugar drops, it impacts your gut health. Stress can severely cause bad digestion. And since your gut health is connected to your brain health, then it also can cause mental distress. So nutrition is paramount as it relates to controlling your stress levels.
So Terri, what are your tips and strategies for people that kind of came out of Irma, or they're in kind of difficulties with COVID-19 changing their livelihood or their financial circumstances? Sometimes people feel like, oh, I can't necessarily eat the way I used to. It's too expensive, or I, you know, can't afford the supplements I used to take. What tips would you give people that are thinking along those lines and are concerned about, you know, wanting to eat healthy but not sure they can afford to?
Just go and utilize the Market Square. The Market Square is a great untapped resource. There's so many local fruits and vegetables and Caribbean food that traditionally, you know, you're used to, and it's more affordable. You can get 3 avocados for like $5, and you know an avocado is an avocado. It's not processed, it's not sprayed, it's wholesome, nutritious food. So you don't have to break the bank. You just have to be wise, be smart about it. There's fresh fish, local fishermen, there's local butchers that butcher the goats and whatever. And those are all considered healthy, wholesome food. It may not be vegan or plant-based, but it's still real unprocessed food. So just stick to what you know traditionally and locally, this is your food source. Utilize it. Spinach, it's all over the place. Some people grow it in their backyards. There's so many at-home farmers right now. Utilize what you grow. You know the source. You know it's not sprayed with anything. It's not processed, and so it's better for you. So you don't have to worry about the supplements and the vitamins and the stuff that you can't afford anymore.
Thank you so much for talking today, Terri. It was so great to get your knowledge and your tips and strategies, really beneficial. And as we know, it's really important to take care of our health. And thank you for spending the time to share some of that with us.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. Thank you so much.
And Terri, where can people find you if they're looking for you outside of this interview, just to kind of get more information, or even for the new moms for maternal health?
I am on Facebook at Chic Gourmet and also on Instagram at Chic Gourmet. And I'm also, for new moms, postpartum wellness, I'm at terri.postpartumwellness, both on Instagram and Facebook.
Right. Thanks again.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Dr. Mike Turnbull. It's such a pleasure to have you. Brought you on today to kind of talk about coping strategies, a little bit of post-Irma, COVID-19, all the stuff that's going on. So thank you so much for joining us today. We can really learn from you, I know.
Such a pleasure to be here.
Let me just first do a little introduction about you, because you've been busy, you do a lot, and I know you're so passionate about your community, so we're just so grateful to have you. Dr. Michael Turnbull, but affectionately known as Dr. Mike to people on the island, probably elsewhere, is a licensed clinical psychologist and ordained minister. He's passionate about making the lives of those he serves better, and I think anyone who's met him definitely knows that. He even started a not-for-profit at 16 called Project Lionheart, where he was really looking at-risk youth getting presents and gifts at Christmas. So a beautiful start there. And you attended H. Leviticity Stout as your first kind of post-secondary foray, which is great. And then you went on to Howard University, where you did a master's in divinity, a master's of science in psychology, and then later a doctorate of psychology from the American School of Professional Psychology. All those things. That's great.
Yes.
And then you went on, currently you're the director of the Wellness Center Behavioral Health Clinic, which you started, as well as the Wellness Center Medical Clinic. And through your partnerships locally and internationally, you've been able to do a lot of work, a tremendous amount of work with volunteers, doing trauma groups and individual therapy for over 1,500 children after the devastation of Hurricane Irma and Maria in 2017. You also serve as an executive pastor at Cane Garden Baptist Church, and you're the husband of Chandria Turnbull and father of Anaya and twins Elijah and Amal. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I would just like to say—
It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'd like to say that I know we got to meet each other in just after Irma. We were both doing some training for frontline workers and educators, which was just a pleasure to be a part of. And so we got to meet there, and I think we even had a meal together. And I remember lamenting so much that we hadn't met each other when we were both serving doing therapy on island, because we did overlap and we never got a chance to work together, and we would have loved that. So I know we were both like, oh, we were here at the same time at that time, and would have been great even for the consultation. But anyways, we got to know each other,
amazing.
and it was meant to be.
Yeah.
So thank you again for meeting with us. I wondered if you could tell the listeners a little bit about what you're noticing with the impacts of, post-Hurricane Irma and Maria, as well as COVID-19, like what you're kind of noticing with the families and the children you serve.
Well, post-Hurricane Irma, September 6, 2017, changed all of our lives. It was a significant trauma that we all experienced. 97% of people lost something in the storm, some kind of damage, but the emotional trauma after and the family separation created residual trauma that even now we were still dealing with. And now with this pandemic, what we're seeing is like after we're just getting like settled, we're just starting to feel some sense of normalcy, and this pandemic rips this sense of normalcy away. And to my assessment thus far, this has been far worse because although you can't see the damage, people are losing their jobs, families are being separated, people are having to make tough decisions. And when we had the lockdown, which we had for almost 6 weeks, 24-hour lockdown, in that period, I recounted that I hospitalized more patients than I ever did in the history of my career. In that 6-week period, people were suffering with immense panic attacks, people who had never had a mental health history before, and people were suicidal, depressed, and cases of domestic violence, and all the things that were happening were really, really tough. It's been a really hard time, and even now, as we are here, we don't have any current active cases. This is a worldwide pandemic, so it's really feels like we're trapped to some extent. Families are feeling helpless, and people are really having to find really creative and new ways of coping. And everyone here in the office, we're flooded and trying to make sure that we can help and assist and try to see how we can navigate this very turbulent time that we're facing. And mental health becomes really, really important.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, and what you said there too about it being worldwide is it's so interesting, because when do you get a chance that the world, and again, not all the same, we certainly don't experience this all the same, but we all are experiencing something in it, right? And when do you have that where, I'm in Canada right now, we also are seeing this, uptick of more people experiencing anxious symptoms or depression, or people that were already struggling, feeling more unwell. And so, I can really relate to that. And then how often, and then of course, supports that you might have with family and friends and people being separated just make it so much more compounded, because no one can travel, no one can help out, no one can go take a break from it, right? There's nowhere to go to take a break.
Yeah, that's exactly the truth. And our borders here locally are closed, and it just compounds the issue. And people are, especially where tourism is maybe 50% or more of our economy, has taken a really hard hit, which means a significant amount of our workforce is unemployed. And as you know, work has a great indication on mental health, like our ability to feel like we're doing something, that we have a purpose. And that has been stripped away from a pandemic that we can't touch. And we're hoping that a vaccine comes. But even when that happens, the residual effects and the traumas are still there. And I have been experienced of trying to do therapy virtually and homeschooling with my kids at one time. And it is rather difficult. There's a significant amount of stress. So coping is not something that I'm just saying because I'm a psychologist. I experience the need to find healthier ways and different ways to cope, because this stress is so immense that we have to be able to see how we can figure this out, because it's not easy at all.
No, and I think, even also, like, I had to switch a lot of my practice online. I feel it more. I find the work more draining than before. Like I, could see more people in an amount of time. And now I find that I have to see less people just for, in a day than I used to be able to. And I think it's because it's that everyone has the stress. You have the stress, I have the stress. We all have our own things going. We're trying to maybe, homeschool, as I was also, and, just go and find a quiet room. Technology is always problematic. I live far from the city as well. So like the BVI, I also have unreliable internet at times. And so all these things really add up. And so people are trying to work from home, or as you said, not have work anymore from things can just kind of flip on its head because you were dependent on something that might be international or, require tourism or whatever it is. And so there's just so much change and people are really struggling to cope, aren't they?
Yeah, and how you cope in the midst of this is really that if you used to go take a trip with your family, it's summer vacation.
Yeah.
We are not able to leave. We can leave, but coming back will mean that you'll be quarantined, which is another sort of stress. And where you're going to go to be free from, so you're kind of feeling stuck. And what you're able to do. So we've been having to really find creative ways to help people manage their stress and redevelop new coping mechanisms right now based on what we have. We have electricity, we have the ability to leave our homes, we have a lot of freedoms, but then it comes to that point where you just feel stuck and you feel not in control, you feel helpless, and that's a trigger for being anxious. So one of the things that we've been doing is, I draw two circles and said, the small circle is what we're able to control, what we're able to master. It's really small. We can control how we eat. We can control our exercise. We can control when we go to sleep. We can control some plans that we have for our day. Those are the things we can control. And we should really try and put our effort to master those things. Now, outside of that circle are the things we can't control. We can't control the curfew. We can't control the vaccines. We can't control when the border is going to open up. We can't control those things. And if we spend more time trying to exert power on things that we can't control, we'll feel helpless, which will lead to sadness. And the anxiety of not knowing when we're going to have some level of resolve is going to overwhelm us. And the things that we can control, even those things begin to suffer. So one of the major recommendations that I had to try and we've been doing here is looking at your medium of control. What's within your circle that you can master, and try to do that to the best of your ability. And the other things outside your control, literally, you have to process and say, I can't control these things. Affirm to yourself and know realistically, well, we may not be able to travel till next year, and let that sink in. Feel the pain of it, feel the anxiousness and the sadness of it, but allow yourself to accept that and not judge the situation, because again, that's out of our control and we need to master. We can become better people and just find new hobbies. What new hobbies can we develop? It may be funny, but I was having a difficult time because one of the things I do to cope is sail on the weekends. And there was a long time that you were not allowed to sail your boats at all. You weren't allowed to leave your house. And that one, all the other things didn't bother me, but that one was really hard. Yeah. And I was like, well, I need to find something. So I went to Babbel and picked up Spanish again, right?
Awesome.
and it worked. I just found something to occupy my time because Netflix wasn't doing it. I got tired of Netflix. I got tired of the internet because you spend all day on your computer doing Zoom calls. That's the last thing you want to do. So Babbel it was. And learning Spanish, like 2 lessons a day, it's been fun. And it helps. So whatever you do, it doesn't have to be the most popular thing. It just has to help you cope. And unhealthy ways of coping, we have seen a lot of, even there was a period 2 weeks in the full 24-hour lockdown, talking to some of the fellow doctors here, that the substance use ward was full with people having overdoses and drinking alcohol. And although I understand that people use that to cope, when you cope with such emotions and use such negative ways of coping, you can trigger some habits that become really hard. And then after the pandemic is finished, you're still struggling with a habit that you've picked up. So just be really mindful of what you can master within your circle, and ask yourself, what can I master today within my circle?
I love that. There's so many good gems in there. I love what you said about, you know, feeling your feelings, like taking a moment to grieve the loss. So often we're just suck it up, push on, keep going, kind of, you know, loop in our head. And although that sometimes serves a purpose, what we really often need to do is take a moment to really acknowledge the feeling. Just like if a friend called you, it's not, they didn't want to hear suck it up, move on right away. You have to say, yeah, that's really hard. How can I help? And you come alongside. You need to do the same thing for yourself, really, don't you? You need to say, wow, that's a feeling. I'm going to feel it. And then we can make plans. But without doing that, I think so often we just push it down, and then that kind of grows, doesn't it? All the things we push down.
Exactly. And what this pandemic has shown, especially here locally, the persons that did not deal with their emotions regarding Irma end up now are revisiting those feelings of loss and helplessness and tragedy. So this pandemic has opened up wounds that weren't really healed. And it's hard because Irma was tough. I mean, it was significantly tough. But the next day, as we were able to pull together, this pandemic creates such a distance, a physical distance, that all of us in humanity need to feel that sense of closeness. And that loneliness further deepens down the symptoms of isolation and withdrawal, even when you don't want it. So it's triggered people's depressive emotions who've been trying to, you know, come around and be around people. That has been taken away. So it's really a triggering effect that has such a big latitude. And for you and I and other mental health workers who are on the front line of this, we have a long way to go because there's so much things that are coming up. And with people losing jobs and economic effects that are going to be lasting, we just have to brace and pace ourselves. So being able to ask ourselves the difficult questions as, how do I feel now in this? You know, it's difficult, and we are human. And whether you are a construction worker or you work in hospitality, regardless of what you've done for a living, you are a human being. So as you said, Kelly, being able to stop and really accept and not shun away your feelings is important, because repressed emotions have to go somewhere. They have to go somewhere. And the longer they stay and you ignore them, it's not that they're not there. They're there festering, growing, becoming more entwined into your everyday life. And one day you're feeling bad and you don't even know why you're feeling that way. And so, yes, being okay to say, I'm not okay. It's okay to say you're not okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. Some of the things I've been encouraging people to simply do, if you're still working and you're having to start back your jobs, yes, you would have taken a week off in summer vacation. Well, there's nowhere to go. Maybe do a staycation on the beach on a Monday or a Tuesday when it's fully empty, and treat yourself. Or go for a massage, go for a walk, be able to do these things. So if you had a week off in the summer planned, well, take one day off per week, per week for a month. So you have a 4-day weekend. Simple things that we can do that we are in control of help us bring back our power in these uncertain times.
Absolutely. Really good advice. The other thing that you have said is this reminds me of the personal power grid. Like when you can take action and you have some control in your situation, how you can really have that situation mastery. But if you can't take action and there's not a lot you can do and there's no control, then that's the place to let go. And it's in the other parts of the grid where sometimes we try and take control when we don't have it. We fight against, we rage against the storm, that whole ceaseless striving. That doesn't work, nor does giving up, right? And that's where we could take action, but we don't. When we have some, you know, even though we don't have a lot of, like, we have places we could take action and we just choose not to. That's that point of giving up. So it's a tricky balance, but finding places to take the mastery where we can, let go where we can't. And I think that's really important. So thank you for for highlighting kind of like that circle of what you can do and you can't do when it comes to vacations, when it comes to what you eat and getting a bit of exercise, these kind of things. It's really important, and I think people really benefit from maybe even taking a look of what those two circles look like for them in their lives and the things they have to move out, right? Yeah. Any advice for how to talk to children during these times? Because I know like a lot of us are struggling, parents are struggling, and they're like, I don't know, will school resume in the way we thought? Will clubs happen? Are you going to be able to see grandma in Florida this year? Like these kind of questions, we don't necessarily know the answers. So that can be, as you say, very anxiety provoking when we also feel uncertainty.
Yeah.
How do we handle it with kids?
Well, one of the most pertinent advice that we can give is to just be honest with your children. Be honest and speak to them at a level that they can understand in plain English. All the research before with children with cancer, when you're able to tell them honestly about what is happening, what they're going through, the level of treatment, they have a higher rate of recovery than those children that are not told what is actually happening. Yeah. So what I did with me and my wife did with our kids, and it was difficult because you're scared as well as a parent. Yeah, so absolutely. The first thing I did, I told my kids, is that I don't like this either. This whole COVID stuff is frustrating. Daddy has feelings, and I don't like it. And it's okay. So first, give your kids permission by your honesty to let them know that it's okay to have feelings around this. So then you create an atmosphere in your house where you're able to speak about it. So my twins came up to me and said, Daddy, when is the COVID going to die? When is COVID going to die so we can go to the beach?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they said that, I felt so helpless because I didn't have an answer. Mm-hmm. We were on lockdown. That was maybe the third week. And I said, I want to go to the beach. We can't go to the beach right now, and that sucks. But what can we do now? They were like, well, maybe we could just blow up the pool outside and put some water in it. I was like, great idea.
Yeah, great.
Admission of your feelings, sharing your anxieties, and coming up with a strategy. So what I would say, kids love structure. Yeah. We came up with a daily structure, what we're going to do. So structure is important. Planning is important. Having an atmosphere where your children can come openly and say how they feel. Because even here in the BVI, we have a little bit more freedom to move around. But still, there are limitations. Children have been out of school since around end of March. So they haven't seen their friends. Play dates are hit or miss. So being able to make creative ways to be able to have connections, because kids thrive on connections. Yeah. So being honest, creating an environment so they can share their feelings, having plan and structure, and just finding ways that you can be creative with your family to spend time. One of the significant benefits for me is that, instead of working till 7 p.m., 8 p.m. at night, work finished, hopefully it finished earlier, and I was home. So I was able to catch that early movie. I was able to maybe cook at home and spend more time. And I was around and present. So there are ways that you can look at things. So shifting your perspective allows you to be able to be helpful to your families. But be honest with your kids. Don't lie to them. Don't sell them false hopes, because disappointment in a already anxious time is something that we don't need to add to our already full plate.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice again. I was going to ask you what the positives were coming out, because I think as much as there's been a lot of difficulties, I think for all of us, there's been maybe some forcing to slow down at times. Maybe you can't have quite as busy a schedule. And some people are finding some benefits in that. Are there some things that you will take forward out of this that you hope to kind of keep going in your life and your family?
Yeah, one of the things that I definitely will keep going, and that's something that I did, and we lost it. We started after Irma, we lost it again, and now it's just the importance. It may seem very psychological, but being in the moment, being in the present, like being available when your kids are talking to you, when they're sharing what is happening, really putting the phones down, putting the internet down, and really being present with them. like coming home and tickling them to death till they're laughing and spending that important time, things that you'll overlook. But when you don't have all these other options, it forces you to be more mindful of what is really important and central in your life. And this pandemic has shown you the fragility of life, the fragility that things that we may take for granted, being able to hug our family members, that we shouldn't take for granted. Absolutely. So that's some positives that I've taken, that we need to slow down even more. One of my professors in divinity school, we had to read a book by Howard Thurman called, it spoke about meditations of the heart. And he said it's important for us to stop long enough, not only to smell the flowers, but stop long enough to watch the grass grow. And when you've watched the grass grow, stop longer enough to hear it grow. And that's something that has been really poignant, to just slow down, because we become way more effective being mindful, peaceful, and present than when we're just doing a million things per day. So if you've been really, really busy and you've been really doing a lot and you hate like this not being busy, I will really consider trying finding time to appreciate the moments of stillness and plan them, because when this pandemic is over, and it's going to be over at some point, that's the hope. It's going to be over at some point, and life returns to this busyness and this chaotic stuff. Some of us are going to regret not being appreciative of these moments of downtime, that we had to stay home and that we weren't able to travel and explore new things. Even here in the BVI, we have 60 islands, and there are a lot of people that haven't been. Go diving, go scuba diving, go swimming, go to Just Van Dyke, go to Virgin Gorda, go to Norman Island. Like, explore these things that we take for granted. Something that I've seen really positive that I haven't been able to do is that they've started hiking groups here. So people have been hiking all these amazing trails and exploring. So they're exercising, which helps reduce stress. They're being able to hike with others at a safe distance. So you have that camaraderie, and then which helps us that feeling of accomplishment. And exploring helps us see and broaden our horizons. So those are positive things. And just being able to have meaningful conversations with people. Because when you're able, one thing that you know, doing therapy video, it takes so much more energy to have that therapeutic connection. And when you're talking with someone via video and they're telling you, if you're really in the conversation, you have to be even more present because you're really trying to make that connection. So it shows you how to really, appreciate the moment. And that's something I really have been really taking on, making sure that even before a session and even before our talk here, I sat in the car and meditated for 10 minutes just to appreciate the moment, to be available, because we can't plan all of our days, but we have structure that at the beginning of our day, whether you wake up at 7, 6 o'clock, maybe try waking up at 5:45 and have a moment, 10, 15 minutes of peace before life starts. And that has helped me significantly. And that's something that I will continue to do regardless how busy things get. So that's been something that I will, share personally, that I think has been helpful, and have been passing it on to people we've been having the opportunity to work with. So yes, that's been really, really helpful.
Well, I could just sit and chat with you all day, and hope to be able to do that again sometime soon. Really, thank you so much. This was really great. I know that people probably have some questions, and I know they can find you right at the BVI. Let me just get the name right. The Wellness Center Medical Clinic and the Wellness Center Behavioral Health Clinic, if they need to get in touch or need to reach out for some help. So that's where you can find, unless he's at, King Garden Bay Baptist, these are the places you can find him. So do reach out if you're needing to talk to someone, because he and his staff will be able to help and get you connected. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I've been following you on Instagram and the amazing work that you're doing for your community in the wider world. So thank you so much. We're all in this together.
Absolutely.
And we'll cross over. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Mike. Thanks. introduce Kristin Frazer. She is the design director at Turnbull Incorporated, and she comes from a history of a family that was very creative and innovative, and we're just so delighted to have her with us. She's very busy, so awesome to have her here. She started really sharing her designs. I'm sure she was designing even when she was a wee one, but she started sharing them in 2008, and Turnbull has gone on to make a mark internationally, both with her fashion line and her swimsuits, and she keeps the fashion world on its toes. She's had some super interesting collaborations. So she has worked with Otterbox, and she's had a collaboration with Necker Island, and she's starting to take the home decor world by storm as well. So welcome, Kristin. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm definitely happy to be here. Super excited to be here. Thanks again.
Awesome. So glad to have you. I, of course, knew you when I lived in the BVI and just always found you such a warm, kind, inspiring person. So when I thought about doing this, resilient series, talking about coping and all that, I really had you in mind as a professional woman who has launched an amazing business. And I wondered if you could maybe start with talking a little bit about how it's been for you working through adversity in the last couple of years, knowing that there's been some significant things to work through. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, there's been plenty of bumps, lots of speed bumps, but I think, of course, the main one started with Hurricane Irma, and then backed with Maria, so Maria.
Yeah.
And then coming into COVID, it's just been a wave of speed bumps that came my way in having my business for over the past pretty much going on 12 years now. And over the course of the years, I've found that all my experiences, all of the journeys, all of the different collections in me designing my swimwear, resort collaborations, any kind of engagement with celebrities or opportunities, all of that still didn't really prepare me for where I am now. Interestingly enough, I mean, I would say that because it, of course, helped, working with buyers, working with, even as far as my mentees from my mentorship program, getting the support from the local community, and overall just working in the business plan year in and year out. Nothing could really prepare you for the now. And my now is COVID. And I bounced back a bit after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, just due to the fact that I had no choice but to make things work.
Right.
I wasn't in a very bad place because I had already built so many resources over the course of the years. So that kind of helped me gain my footing a little bit. But it also helped me to really push my creative juices and my marketing skills to an all-time high. And so that's, that really, I think with everything that I did over the course of 2017 to now, I think it's kind of really propelled me to do more, be better at what I do, and really try to create this secure fence around me so that, should anything happen now, in the near future, I would be a little bit more prepared to be able to handle, whatever it is, whether it's through finances, whether it's, I have a little mini capsule collection on the back end that I can put out, whether it's another collaboration that I would have in the works, which I do have in the works, my second licensing agreement deal that I have coming out very soon, and just being a little bit more prepared so that I could really come out on top a lot more, and so that I could continue to be that inspiration for the young people in the BVI and continue to be an inspiration worldwide for other Caribbean designers, and just designers on a whole all over the world. My story is a very interesting one, and I always smiled because I could never imagine that I would be where I am today, and even speaking to you, Kelly. So my story is interesting. That's all I could say.
Yeah, and inspiring, right? Like, I think
Yes.
If you don't have a story sometimes, or if everything came easy and you just decide to be a fashion designer one day and everything worked out and you never had to pivot or change, then, you might not be as relatable. And I think probably what works really well in your mentoring program is having that story so that people can see a little bit of themselves or their struggles in what you share with the world. So that's fantastic. So I just mentioned the word pivot. It's been a bit of a COVID rally cry, like with the people to say pivot, and it's been, you know, kind of a funny thing, and in memes. And I just wondered, you know, how has that concept been important for you as a business owner during these uncertain times? Like the word pivot, does it mean something to you?
It's a strong word. It's a strong word. I don't use it as much because I found that how I pace myself and how I try to set up my business with all the different areas of the business, it's kind of helped things to go a little bit smoother. You know what I mean? So in 2008, when I started with Truffle, I really just focused on women's swim. And then I jumped into the women's resort. And then I jumped into kids swim, Truffle 284. And then I jumped into doing men's swim and men's resort. And then I jumped into Truffle home. And so over the course of the pretty much it's 12 years now, August will be 12 years. I've always been introducing, according to my business plan from the beginning, little labels, you know, as far as the bigger picture of Truffle Incorporated and what I wanted that brand to look like. So it's the word pivot is a strong word for a lot of people, but it's a little bit more easy for me because now I might not be selling as much swimsuits, but my home line is taking off because people have been home and they're looking around and seeing how they can revamp and restyle, and they're like, you know what? Wall needs some wallpaper, or my couch looks very drab. I think a pop-up print and a travel print would be amazing. And so projects under the home line has been working way more for me than me selling swim, you know, right now. So I have the different labels to which I can turn to based on the situation or or what's happening in the now for me. And with me launching my Truffle Active line, which is another label that's going to come out later.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is that speaks to, of course, you being more healthy, more fit. If you want to do yoga, you just need to exercise and just get yourself out there. Why not feel comfortable doing it in Truffle Active? And so that line is going to drop really soon. And so I wanted to be able to create the different avenues that I could work in. And utilize my designs, utilize my creativity, and of course, utilize the original print concepts to tell a holistic story. So pivot is a big word for a lot of people, but it's an okay word for me because I've learned to balance it all and just adopt.
It might have been too, like you've had some significant things that a lot of people had COVID to deal with in the last couple of years, but not necessarily a huge hurricane, absolutely, you know, devastating where you live. So for other people, you know, this might be the first really big shift. And for you, you've had to already work through that a little bit. I was going to ask you, like, has crisis equaled opportunity through all this somehow?
Of course. And I am very big on whether the opportunity is right there in my face,
right,
or whether I decide, okay, this is a time where I'm going to create an opportunity. I do that a lot more than anything else, really. And so I have a special project that I'm working on now with a resort. I can't say the name right now, but I created that opportunity that I wanted to see for myself. And, you know, a few months later, opportunity is there, you know. And so this is not something that they had in mind. This is not something that I per se had in mind either, but I went all out and I created the story. I created the documents, the presentations, and I worked my way around how I can see the collaboration or working with Truffle, how that could be in terms of when we open back up, you know, once the whole pandemic subsides and tourists start coming back in, how Truffle could be influential in their story. And so they never knew until I created the window of opportunity. So, and I remember an interview I did past, and I told the lady, I build the door, I get the wood, I build the door, I put it all up, and then I paint it really colorful, and then I knock on the door. And then when I open it, that's, you know, that's what it is. That's what I said to her in a joking way, but in a serious way, it makes sense. And so I create the opportunity that I want to see. And that's now created another avenue of revenue for me that I would have never thought about 4 years ago. So COVID and people being home, they really, you know, for us when we were home, you could either go on the internet and just browse and watch Netflix all day. You could really try to strategize and see how you can impact the world, or how you can impact your business more with having to pivot, or with having to shift. And for me, I had to look at my business. I had to look at my mentorship program, because my mentees are a big source of inspiration for me. I had to look at all the different labels that I have, the businesses that I have with people worldwide, my factories, how everything would have affected me. And I really had to make a change and create opportunity. And I'm really glad that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And great how you're able to kind of be aware of what your customers might be looking for and what might be another place that you could meet their needs, right? So that's fantastic. And what you're saying brings to mind a lot. I think the quote is something like, opportunity looks a lot like hard work, or success. I can't remember one of them, but I think you probably agree with that. This isn't just things that just keep falling in your lap. You are hustling, you are working, you are getting out there, you're having conversations, you're doing plans, you are strategizing. And I think that's fantastic. And probably something you teach your mentees. Sorry, what were we going to say?
Oh, yes, I'm a visual person.
Yes.
So, wherever I go, and I get my inspiration pretty much from anywhere, but of course, mainly from the BVI, and wherever I go, it's just automatic for me. If you're a creative, if you're passionate about whichever design field you're in, or whatever artistic field you're in, it's going to be automatic. If you're super passionate about what you do and what you love. And so for me, it's automatic for me to be, I can go on a day sail, Kelly, and I'm supposed to be relaxing. I can guarantee you, I'm going to go snorkeling. I'm going to see something, and I'm going to come right back up. I'm going to put it in my phone or sketch something down real quick, because that's just how it is, so it's organic.
But I love it, because it doesn't sound like it's draining to you, but rather energizing. I think sometimes our work is draining, and then we have to be careful to shut it off. But if it's energizing and you're meeting and finding inspiration in those downtimes, as a therapist, I can approve that. You can have that.
I'll settle for that. I do admit sometimes it could be a bit much, and I do have to take a step back and say, okay, Kristin, just take a minute, breathe, get a little nap, but for the most part, I love what I do, and I don't need to be, a millionaire or a billionaire. I literally wholeheartedly love what I do. And if I can put a smile on someone's face and they can feel comfortable wearing my product or seeing my product somewhere, or if it's an otter case, which a friend of mine in the Bahamas sent me a message and said, just what I got, my otter box case, and he's in the Bahamas, and that's still, that's enough for me to continue.
And it's like these connections, right, with your people, your friends, your fans from around the world. Amazing. It's probably really fun to see that. I was thinking about the word perseverance, and what you might tell other entrepreneurs or young entrepreneurs, or what you already tell those you mentor. Like, what would you say about persevering during uncertain, difficult times?
Well, I think for me in the BVI, I've had to go through it quite a few times. I've had to go through it with the flood, actually. I didn't mention that.
Yes,
the flood
that's right.
Irma, and then Maria, and now COVID. I've had to really hug that word and hold it very, very tight, because for me, persevering and doing what I do, I might absolutely love what I do, but at the end of the day, I'm human. And so for those people that, want that word of encouragement, to understand that they must persevere in the good and the bad times, they need to really go back to their first found love, and why. They need to go back to their why. Why are they doing this? Why did they fall in love with this particular thing in the first place? What sets them aside from anyone else because of what they're into? For me, I stood out on my porch after Hurricane Irma with no rails, no nothing. I just stood out and I looked out in the ocean, because I have pretty much like a 180 view of all the islands. And I looked out and I said, this is pretty much it. I feel like this is it. But in this has to come something better. Has to. And I didn't stay down for long. I didn't stay sad for long, because I went back to why it is I do what I do. And I thought about, again, my mentees. I can't stop because they're looking at me. I thought about all of the obstacles, but all of the wins that came from the obstacles. I remember, all of the times, even just reaching out to OtterBox. It was literally here in my office late at night. I sent an email to the founder of OtterBox and pitched myself in an email. It wasn't a PowerPoint presentation. It wasn't a PDF. It was in the body of the email. I said how I could be influential. This is what it is I want to do. And then almost about 6 months later, we have a whole collaboration, and I'm in over 2,200 stores, you know, and that's just in 6 months, just from me sending an email, you know. So I thought about all the reasons why I do what I do and the results that came from that, and how much more I can do because of the situation. So I tried my best not to look at the negative, but I tried to look at the positive that could come out. And I, you know, started speaking more positive. I started, you know, making sure that I kept myself around people that were just as positive, if not more positive, so that I also can get inspired and encouraged. And I just pretty much prayed and just had a lot of faith that, you know, I could keep going no matter what. Even with COVID, you know, I was running from making masks. I really was. But, you know, when people started asking, is Trefle making masks? I said, well, Trefle will now be making masks. I can tell you, Trefle making masks has helped to really keep my business afloat, let me tell you, because I couldn't believe the unwavering response of people that wanted to have beautiful prints on their faces made out of course, organic cotton. So, you know, it's a thing, you know, and
it's now a thing. Who knew? Yeah, amazing.
So you just got to figure out exactly what your why is, why you do what you do, you know, if you're still passionate about what it is that you're doing and what you're into. And if you are, then that's all that you need. That's all that you need.
Yeah, it sounds like your faith has been a big part of that, and, you know, helping you get through this. And also too, you mentioned like just being really careful with your words, and words can be really powerful, right? So if we start our day off with like, this is going to be the worst day ever, we can probably make that happen pretty easily.
So, correct. I believe in speaking things into existence, because that's just what it is. You know, if I moped around every day and I said, oh, I didn't get any sales this week, I'm probably not going to get any sales next week, then you probably will not get any sales next week. But if you speak positive and say, okay, this is the week that I'm going to focus on, I will get sales. This is going to be a great week, you know, no matter what comes, this is going to be a great week, and you stay positive, then things will align, and you get what you ask for, pretty much.
Absolutely. Kristin, always such a pleasure. I wish that this was in person over tea, but glad to being able to connect with you. Just so inspiring. And I know everyone watching is just going to take so much out of this. So thank you so much for sharing your heart and your own inspiration. I think that's really helpful. So thanks again.
No problem, Kelly. Such a pleasure. We have to do it again.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Take care. Well, welcome to today's talk. We are talking to Stacy Mather. He is a former elementary school teacher, but he also started YEP back in 2005, and then it really got running as a pilot project in 2007. And he's been working on really empowering children to be responsible citizens. YEP is affiliated with the Boys and Girls Club of America, and also a member of the Youth Club, like an International Association of Youth Clubs. Is that right? I probably butchered that, but.
The World Federation of Youth Clubs.
Thank you, World Federation of Youth Clubs. He did repeat that to me like 3 times before we started. So anyways, so happy to have you, Stacy. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kelly.
My pleasure. Maybe we could just start with, you know, a lot's been happening in the last couple of years, understatement, I know. and just how you've been coping. Like, how have you coped through Irma, all the disasters that happened around Irma, as well as COVID now? How are you doing with it all?
So Irma was a disaster that we saw. We knew it was coming to us. We knew when it hit, the devastation took a few hours.
Yeah.
And then when we woke up, we saw what was going on, what happened. Then it was try to mentally and physically put yourself in a space where you know and think you can survive.
Right.
That was tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
For myself personally, and I guess for the organization of YEP, we shifted from a youth-based organization and started to focus more on community needs.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was a great challenge for us.
Mm-hmm.
I myself personally, probably last year, started to recognize that I took on and took in a lot of emotions and a lot of stories from people. And I realized that I bottled it up and I needed to start trying to expound it, get it out of me. With COVID, it has been a situation where we saw the beginning steps of COVID and the way it was being spread throughout the world, and we knew it was coming.
Yeah.
What has affected us has been it's an unseen enemy, so to speak.
Yes.
We've been fortunate in the BVI, both by decisions made by our government and also because of our proximity to major countries,
Right.
that we haven't had large numbers of cases.
Yeah.
But psychologically, we've been forced to have lockdowns, which has impacted us economically and socially. So that's been very challenging because if you compare the two situations, Irma, you saw why you couldn't go into a building.
Yeah.
And you knew why you couldn't drive around after a certain time because you didn't have street lights and places were destroyed. With COVID, everything is the way it was, or it hasn't changed. So the restrictions of a curfew or a lockdown, psychologically, it's kind of a little different. And, you know, when a person cannot work, there are other things that you worry about: depression, putting food on the table for your family and that kind of stuff. And for me, those things trickle down even to children.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Are you hearing a lot of stories about stress from the kids you work with and how they've been affected?
For us, I would say when COVID hit in the BVI, we started to go on lockdowns in March of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we changed our program and started offering our program to the best way we could on a virtual platform.
Right. Big thing.
And some of our feedback that we got, I remember there was this one parent who said that waking up every day and doing the activities with her daughter made her forget about COVID. It gave her hope, you know, doing drawings, paintings, doing some gardening, different activities. It helped the parent seemingly as much as it probably helped the child.
Doing something normal, right? Like something creative and an outlet. That's great.
Yes. So that structure which is missing or was missing because schools were on break at that time and going into March, April, it gave structure and it helped a lot. You know, waking up every day and having something to do to keep your mind distracted, it engaged them. And then also, even though some of the children, we were doing remote activities with them, my staff and I tried to nurture them, give them positive reinforcement as much as possible. So they felt a connection. They felt that there was someone out there who they maybe had never seen before, but was cheering them on in a over-the-top manner.
Right. Had someone in their court. That's great. You said before, like you felt like even you were kind of bottling some things up. Is some of this like outlet and working with the kids, like, has this been helpful for you to let go of some of that?
It has helped, and I've seen it myself personally. I've seen it with my staff.
Yeah.
You know, as an elementary school teacher, I remember being told once you walk through the gates, you had to change. Your facade had to change. Whatever you had that was worrying you, you had to focus on the little people that you were dealing with. I think sometimes when you hear a child, not necessarily a negative story, but a child who's happy, you know, I'm doing well, I'm doing better in school than I did before, that makes you smile.
Absolutely.
You know, when a parent says their child is responsible, and even though they're out working and the child is at home, they're able to manage their work, you become proud. We started doing Taekwondo, martial arts, during Easter this year, March, April. And there's a child, I think she's about 12 now, and she's always been an introvert. She'd be that child sitting on the outskirts of an activity, very quiet spoken. And I pushed for her to get involved with it. And the instructor who was doing it, he was phenomenal. I mean, she's continuing it now, and her level of confidence has risen. Yesterday, I had a conversation with one of my youth development professionals, and she was pointing out that that young lady, you can see how her confidence has boomed. So not all stories are negative. And then we as adults, we can draw from those things because, you know, if you feel good, I feel good, we all feel good.
Yeah, so true. And I suppose too, I mean, I think it always feels better to give than receive, right? And so as much as you probably had more than your fair share on your plate ever since in the last couple of years, I suppose you had something practical to kind of get on with and doing that probably fed you in some ways. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the thought of, I mean, in the Virgin Islands, we're people who we love to help others. And when you have a purpose, you wake up each day and you have that purpose. Right now, through the kindness of our chairman of the YEP board, Dr. Henry Jarecki, we're doing a project with meals. And I think probably by, tomorrow or early next week, we'll be up to having provided 10,000 meals. Right?
Wow, that's amazing.
So that in itself helps the society right now. And it's a trickle down of a situation where he wanted to do something. He wanted to make sure his staff was still employed. And because he has 2 restaurants, he started to do it. And then that snowballed, and now we have Bitter End Foundation coming on stream and helping us with it. So even if it's just a plate of food, to give someone, it lets them know, hey, someone is thinking about you. And that's one less thing for that person to think about, or a family to think about at this point in time. So that purpose of doing good, it generally helps you get through the day or through any kind of disaster.
Yeah, that's very true. And so I suppose that speaks to kind of having that strategy for coping has really been being able to do some practical things and help others, which is great. You probably have some parents watching right now. Some might be involved with YEP, some might not be. What are some practical tips that you give parents when they're really struggling with coping and how to manage and model some resilience for their children? Are there some things that you suggest that people try or that can maybe help the family?
So the first thing I've learned in life is that even though a child might be small in stature, they're great at understanding and they're really tremendously gifted at coping.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing to lean on your children to get emotional support. You don't need to give them all the details, but saying, hey, you know, mom, dad is really trying. Things are not as good as I would want them to be, but I love you and I'm gonna make it through. Talk to your child, right? Also, give your child that time. If it's an hour laughing, reading a book, watching something on television, riding a bike, planting something. I've found that when a child sees something that they make or they grow, they believe in it. There's one thing you don't ever want to take from a child, that's hope, right? So engage your children, support them. And above all, even the smallest of things, make it a big deal that they did well. You know, if they've done something that needs to be adjusted or corrected, don't be afraid to do it, you know. But at the same time, trying to maintain a facade that everything is okay is not going to benefit your child. Talk to them, let them understand what is going on. So also when they interact with people, they know what's going on as well. They come across being aware and not being sheltered. So the routine shouldn't change that much. Just be truthful to the situation of what is going on.
Right. And maybe that piece where, you know, them understanding that life has challenges and that there's difficulties and parents struggle too can kind of help them when they're struggling and not feel like they're so alone, or why can't I get it? Or why does everyone else seem to be doing well? You know, and when maybe sometimes just admitting, hey, this is hard for us too, can be really, you know, good life lessons, right?
Exactly. It's an opportunity to teach ambition, perseverance, you know, strong will. But it doesn't have to be taught in a way of punishment. It can be taught in a way of nurture.
Right. Just coming alongside and showing your kids compassion, teaching them how to be self-compassionate too during difficult times. Really important. And sometimes we want to skip that step, right? As parents, we just want to fix it for them, or we just want to solve the problem, or we want to end the behavior. And it often isn't that easy, right? We have to take steps, and I'm sure part of YEP is really like getting to know the kids and spending the time and taking that time and putting our phones down. I'm sure that's something you have to get the kids to do too, but really taking time to connect with each other. And I think that it's just such amazing what you do. Have you also taken on some initiatives in terms of like, what can we do sustainably? You know, like how can we, you know, are you growing gardens? Like, is YEP involved in some projects there?
So
You're sighing there?
like most organizations, our plans for 2020 went left, right, center, up, and down, right?
Yeah.
So right now we're basically going, we're planning, we're counter planning, we're adjusting our plans, and we're trying to make it happen. We've been doing a lot of art, painting for expression, right? You know, when a child creates, like as I said before, they believe in themselves. We've found that technology and our approach to technology has to change, because if a child is sitting down, spending X amount of hours a day in front of a computer doing online lessons, it's not exactly what they want. We recently, with our teenagers, started a bike club, and that has helped them, right? We've been teaching swimming. We started a snorkeling club that kind of lost a little bit of momentum because of what was going on. We've been doing crafts with them, trying to get them to learn a second language, some cooking exercises. So, and gardening has been a big thing as well. It's just been trying to keep them occupied. If we do virtual sleepovers, if we do, I think one of my coworkers did a virtual party where they had to actually prepare their own decorations and things. So that works. And for us right now, we're just trying to get to a place where we can actually have a safe physical contact with the children here. That nurturing is still necessary. We have a few here who are doing their academic schoolwork here during the day, and it's challenging because there's a learning curve for an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old who hasn't had a computer or a smart device in their hands. Learning to figure out where to access this, how to access that. That child who needed that teacher to walk around a room and just their physical presence would give them discipline and give them focus. It's difficult to do it through a screen. And I'm frustrated that we haven't arrived at a point where our children are allowed to go back to school, and that socialization is very important. I'm worried about those who are at home alone right now, who are not getting that nurture that they got from their counselor or their principal or their teacher or their peers. So, and then I'm also worried as a former educator, as you know, there was one child yesterday who was here and he was having a snack while he was in class. And, you know, that's not traditionally something that he would do. So I'm also worried about bad habits being picked up. And then that whole settling down when you go back into school, and, you know, those practices that were already established in routines are now broken. So I'm concerned about that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, you kind of hit it, like you've had to change so many things and find new ways and keep trying different things. And some of it, you know, is working out. Some of it's been more of a grind. And I think that's the world over. So, you know, I think everyone's trying to find new ways of doing things. But I think those are really valid concerns. But so great that YEP's there, right? Like so great that there's someone thinking of these, that you and your team are trying to work on solutions and find new ways creatively to connect. And, you know, I'm sure that you guys so grateful for your presence. If people haven't, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, we feel it, we hear it. I mean, when we ask children to give feedback, you know, Open YEP is a lot more louder than Open School. So we've heard it and we appreciate it, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So if people haven't connected with you yet, what's the best way to connect with YEP? If they were thinking of getting involved, if they're thinking of donating time or resources, or if kids really wanted to connect that haven't yet, how can they find you?
So we have our main project on in East End on Tortola. We're still looking at expansion. We did a program on Virgin Gorda during the summer.
Oh, awesome.
And we're thinking about other areas. We just need partners. We're on social media. We have 2 pages, YEP BVI. Our website is yepbvi.com. If if you want to reach me, my last name, Mather @YetBVI.com. Any of those things work. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. So we can be found. We can be found quite easily. Lastly, if you're in the East End area, you'll see the building. It has the letters on it, or someone will be able to tell you where we are and how to find us. We're easy.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. I can hear how committed you are and how passionate you are about the kids and the community. So yeah, thank you for the work you do. We really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate the opportunity as well to speak with you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have a very special guest. We have Henderson Tittle, which is probably a well-known person to many people in the BVI. And so Henderson is with me today, and I just wanted to introduce him, even though he probably needs no introduction. So Henderson's a minister at New Life Baptist Church with a real passion for youth. He wants to empower and encourage youth and really, talks the talk and walks the walk, because he's implemented different programs, which we'll hear more about. And he's been a youth pastor. He's been involved with social development. He's been involved with Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I've been involved in prison ministries. So he really has a heart for the people and executes that, I think, daily. So we're just so happy to have him to come and talk to us about resilience and overcoming together. And that's really what all these talks are about. It's just really about coping and strategies to cope. And so thank you so much for joining me today, Henderson.
You're welcome. Thank you also for having me.
Yeah, we were able to talk a little bit before about we definitely had our paths crossed. I remember meeting Henderson before, so it's nice to see you again. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about how you're doing, as I think I'd be remiss in not asking you how you've been coping, because Irma, the floods, fall, Maria, Jose, then COVID. There's just been a lot going on. So maybe it'd be great to those watching to hear a little bit about how you cope and what helps you move forward.
Well, I think it's the inner peace that is inside that keeps me standing, because what's going on around and about me, sometimes it can get frustrated, it can get discouraging. But because of the inner peace that over the years I have developed that inner peace and know how to go in and pull from within, I think that really helped me a lot. And knowing the Creator, I think that helped also, because every now and then you can reflect on the greatness of His creation. And that helps to keep your mind focused and steady on a lot of other things, instead of get caught up with what's going on wrong and about you.
Yeah, it keeps you some perspective.
So I am peaceful.
That is a great thing to be. Now, I don't know if everyone's feeling peaceful right now in COVID.
It's something that you develop.
Yes, absolutely. Do you have some tips or strategies that you often encourage the youth and young people you work with on developing more inner peace and contentment?
Well, first of all, you got to start to think about what's important to you. What's important to you. That's one of the things that you want to focus on above everything else, because if it is not important to you, then you're going to get carried away by it. Then you have to start about thinking about some new goals that you want to set. Right. Some new goals. So you focus on some new goals. You figure out what is important. You take some me time. That's very important. You take some me time where you just shut everything out, shut down everything for a while, whether you do it for 15, 10 minutes, but you take that time out for yourself and take care of yourself. Then you want to look at some areas where you probably might be slipping, some areas where you might be slipping. And then you want to make sure that you try and see how you can get back on track by staying in control of what you're doing. Always be conscious of the now, because the past is gone. The
Yes.
future, you have no control over it. So
100%.
you must focus on the now, what's going on now, focus on that. And then I will say you have to start to develop new habits and new routine, so that you can cope with what's going on. In other words, make the adjustment when it's necessary.
I love all of that. You made so many great points. I started to take notes because I'm sure I'm going to miss something, but I love how, you know, you're taking time to reflect, taking some downtime, you know, it be that prayer or just some quiet solitude, taking some time to really reflect on, you know, what's important to you. And in COVID, have you found that some people have really had some of what was important shaken up a bit because they couldn't do the things they thought, or they couldn't prioritize the things they used to prioritize? Have you heard some stories in that regard?
Most definitely. I think it forced some of us to be more creative, because then we couldn't, it was not business as usual.
No.
We have to make some adjustment. We have some new strategies, some new game plans. So it brings, I think it brings out the creativity in us. I think it helped bring out the creativity in us. Some people lost their job, and now they still have to survive. They still have to eat. So there are some people now who begin to make a little stuff to sell while they have the time. So it helps to develop some skills that was there, but for some reason they was not tapped into. But because of the COVID, they're all alone. It helps them to tap into those areas.
Great plug to shop local too. I love what you're saying too. And you said this earlier, it's been about change and pivoting. I think we're hearing a lot of that in COVID, and no doubt after Irma as well, that people are having to make new plans and strategize. And it sounds like you found that really looking at yourself, challenging certain things that you used to do, you know, maybe you turn to a little bit of numbing with alcohol, or perhaps you were on your phone all the time. And then you look at that and you say, I can't keep doing that, or this isn't healthy for me. So looking at the habits you've established and really challenging them, and making new ones, right? This whole pivot thing, this whole finding new directions and strategies. I really like that. And so, you know, and I guess too, once again, if you go back and compare that to what you're valuing, like maybe COVID's shaken up some of that. Like I think for us, like I'm in Canada right now, I think around the world, we are experiencing things where we say, what's really important to me now? Right. Is work the end all and be all, or is my social media the end all and be all, or is you know, getting to the gym the end all and be all? And as some things were starting to be taken away, people could really look at that.
Which is very important. And then it helps you also to have a new perspective, a whole new look on life, and what really matters in life. Not just the things that I can touch, the tangible things, but there are more to life than the things that I can touch, the things that I can see, the things that my senses will allow me to embrace. There is more to it than just that.
Yes, absolutely. So this is probably a big component of the program that you started called Male. Can you tell, I know it's for young men and for teenagers. Can you tell me a little bit about the program?
Well, you said for young men, but my wife also ran the female version of Male.
Fantastic. So, you got everyone covered.
We have the female also. It's an innovative program created to effectively guide the young men for their future. We focus on some values, some basic core values. We set up in a way where we're spiritual, we are social, we are a little bit of culture, a little bit of financial aspect to it. And what we do, we focus on the core values, which are integrity, respect, discipline, stuff like that we focus on. Then the activities that we take part in, we have like out camping, outgoing field trip, weekly meetings. Also, we have what we call community project, where community cleanup. We just complete our mangrove planting with Dr. Jiraki. They're at the college where we were involved in planting some mangrove. We have our counseling session. So every Saturday we meet. So the first Saturday is basically when we focus on the core values and our garden. So we have a little garden where we plant some tomatoes, some eggplants, some cucumbers.
Very useful. Yeah.
So on that first Saturday, we head for the garden and we look at the core values. Whichever core value we choose on that particular Saturday, then we focus on that, be it in integrity, be it discipline, be it service, be it excellent. We focus on that. The second Saturday is basically our academic Saturday. So we partner with some of the teachers from the local schools. We bring them in and we help the boys with their English, their maths, their social study, and their science. Then the third Saturday in every month is basically what we call our art Saturday. So we do a little drawing, we do a little singing, we do a little drumming, we do a little dancing, stuff like that. Then the final Saturday, it's our fun Saturday. So sometimes we head over and team up with Yep over there with Stacy, my big brother, or we go to the Save the Seeds Center. We take part in the bowling, or we play a little bit basketball. So it's a holistic program that really cater for the young men. Our mission is to empower the young men of today to create a positive environment for tomorrow. While our vision is with a solid foundation and the essential tools, young men will be empowered to become the future leaders of tomorrow. And our motto basically is guide, nurture, and protect.
That's fantastic.
That's male in a nutshell.
It's great. What a inspiring program. I'm sure it pays you back as much as you put in terms of inspiration and loving what you do. I can see the passion when you talk. And next time I visit, I'd love to come visit if you need any.
Oh, we'll be happy to have you.
Okay, awesome. So you've got this great program. Did you keep going during COVID? Are you still running?
What we did during COVID, we have to be like I say, we have to be creative and innovative. Yeah. So we did what we call an online basketball tournament. So while the boys are home, we did an online 2K20 basketball tournament. And we run it for like 3 weeks. And what they will do, they will compete by themselves, take a shot, a picture of the last score, and they will send it in. So then we will keep a record of that. And at the end, what we did, we put a monetary contribution towards it, where the guy with the most score, we give him $100. The second gets 75, third get 50, and fourth get 25. So everybody get a piece of the pie. Also, we did what we call an online talent competition. Nice. So the boys, they sing, they play, and they send it in, and then we judge it, and then we reward the guys. So we work online, right, during the COVID. Yeah. And then when the government gave us the permission to meet, like in small groups, what we did, we take small groups, we went to the garden, just to give them that outing, go in the garden, plant, weed up some of the stuff that's there, mold up some of the stuff that there, water some of the stuff that there. So during the COVID, we find innovative ways to keep us going, keep us active during that time, because we know the kids been in the house, and sometimes it can have a toll on them.
And so this has been amazing. Have you found that people have tried to stay connected as much as possible, despite restrictions, despite, the COVID way of life right now?
Yeah, because what happened, it helps us to develop what we call the male mentorship talk on a Sunday. So every Sunday at 4 o'clock, since the COVID start, we have our Zoom program. So because of this, we now have our Zoom program where the boys will log in and we choose a topic and we will just discuss a topic. Like we continuing from last week. we're talking about the blame game. We're talking about the blame game. So we're discussing how to handle the situation when you're put in, where you're being blamed for something that you know you didn't do. It have really helped us to develop in a sense.
Yes, that's great. So yeah, you just found more ways to do it. That sounds fantastic. It also sounds like something that's always useful. These are great life skills pretty much for everybody. So what lucky attendees of the program. Just to end and close here, I was wondering if you had heard any inspiring stories about resilience during this difficult time, any specific young people or anything in general that you've been inspired by during the COVID, after Irma. Anything would be great.
Well, one of the things that really hit home is where you have students, they cannot go back to school because of the situation right now. They can't go back to school, and it's very challenging because some of the students have dropped in their grade because to make the adjustment from learning in a classroom, now they are online. Some of them cannot cope with it. Some of them cannot deal with it. So one of the most recent story that really kind of inspired me, where you have this young man who actually take the time out to find his teacher, and make sure that he show up as his teacher home, just so that he can get his teacher attention, because
wow,
that was, for me, that was like determined. So when if they did a subject online and he couldn't get it handled, he will ask his mom to drop him across by his teacher. He will show up by his teacher because he wants that face-to-face connection, respecting the social distances, wearing his mask, and he will say, "Teacher, I don't understand this." And teacher will take the time out to go through it with him face-to-face, and then go back online the next day. And then if you don't understand again, he will find the teacher. To me, that shows the level of commitment that this young man had when it comes to learning.
Yeah, that
encouraged me a whole lot.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you if they want to hear more about your program, or they want to chat with you about anything they're struggling with in this whole thing, because you're a very inspiring person?
Well, my phone number is 340-9140. That's 1284-340-9140. Mr. Mackenzie Baltimore, who's the vice president, his phone number is 1284-494-3998. We are also on Instagram, so you can take a look and visit us on Instagram. Mail underscore BVI, and then our website, www.mailbvi.org. That's mailbvi.org. All the information you need to know about Mail is on mailbvi.org. You can send us an email. It's mail.bvi@gmail.com. So that's mailbvi@gmail.com. And we're on Facebook. It's Mail BVI. So there you have it. On Instagram, mail_BVI. On Facebook, Mentoring Anointed Leaders Everywhere, or Mail BVI. Or you can give us a call, 340-9140, or send us a note or say something to us on mail.bvi@gmail.com.
And you clearly don't mind, because you were very clear on how to get a hold of you. So do reach out to Henderson. He's got the passion and he would love to help. Thank you again for meeting today for our series. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you also.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. Today we have Pastor Gregory George and Sarah Penney from Green VI, and they're here to kind of talk to us about resilience and sustainability, and I'm so happy to have them. Sarah's in her car, so we've just grabbed her off the street. Oh, she's gonna get interrupted. Oh, no, okay, she's not. And we've got Pastor Greg here as well. Thank you guys again. Greg, you've got a lot of experience. You live in Virgin Gorda, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, and you have a lot of passion for teaching people about reusing, recycling, reducing, and you've brought a lot of initiative to Green VI and Virgin Gorda, so we're so happy to have you on the call. You're also a pastor and a huge, huge passion for serving your community. Thanks for being on the call. And Sarah, what don't you do? Sarah has performing arts. She's brought so much creativity to the island. She also has a huge passion for green initiatives and has taken the role. What's are you the director? What's your?
Yeah, I'm serving as deputy director because we have an incredible executive director, Charlotte McDevitt. And so I have a bit of a focus on the We Recycle program as a program manager. But as we sort of will talk about sustainability and all things green, they basically, you know, everything is together. It's really hard to separate one theme from the other. And as an organization, we try to focus on what's the relationship between humankind and the environment. And so that really takes us into energy, waste, water, how do we deal with that? And then Green VI as an organization is trying to create a model that's really helpful for small island nations and remote places where innovation and education are really, that's the key to success in how we get better at this green thinking. Yeah, so that.
You've always been a passion. I'm sure you both have been hugely involved in your communities. I can just reading from your bios, you've always been passionate about, you know, helping the BVI as citizens, as global citizens, and just wanting to connect. I know you're both probably huge connectors, so this is just an opportunity, I guess, to connect with a wider audience and just hear a little bit about what you're up to. So thank you again for joining us in this series where we're working on overcoming together. So I guess my first question, a lot's been going on the last few years on the island. You know, Greg, I'm getting a chance to meet you.
Really? A lot? No, Kelly, hadn't noticed.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so, Greg, you know, I'd love to hear, you know, your experiences. Sarah, I've known you for a really long time. Obviously, we knew each other when I lived in the BVI, and I left right before Irma. So a lot's been happening since then. Can you just walk me through, you know, people are going to know exactly what's been going on, but can you just walk me through, you know, how you guys have been coping since Irma and everything after, and COVID as well, and what's kind of inspiring you these days on the island? I'd love to hear from both of you on that.
You want to start, Greg?
Yeah, go ahead. Follow you, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, the highlights of the last 3 years as far as the BVI is concerned is Irma. Like everything kind of goes from there. So the end of 2017, we often forget about the floods that came right before Irma that pretty much exhausted and devastated most of our population, which is part of why Irma was so brutal, because so many people had lost their homes, their livelihoods. And then Irma came, and then the other piece that we don't often talk about is how many people left us, how many people passed away because of the stress in the months following floods and Irma. They only ever count the people that died in the storm. And it gives me goosebumps often to talk about the fact that it came to a point where you almost couldn't go to another funeral. You know, you'd lost so many people over I'd say the 3 months following Irma. And then we came into 2018, and it was the hardest work because everybody was rebuilding, right? And it was so hard, and it was a lot of physical exhaustion and the emotional of really coming to terms with what was lost and how much we had to rebuild. 2019, we got a new government. That was, you know, a big transition in terms of our social fabric, because it was a massive change, almost entirely new elected leadership. And then we came to 2020, where the pandemic is almost equally massive impact on our economy and our community, but different from Irma, that we can't fix it by working hard, right? Like we can't fix it ourselves. We can't rebuild this alone. And we are very, I think, aware of how vulnerable we are as a nation that relies on importation of just about everything.
Yeah.
And relies heavily on a economic pillar of tourism that has disappeared altogether overnight. So, I don't know. Does that kind of sum it up, Greg?
Yeah, just about. Yeah.
But as I think, Kelly, knowing you for so long, you see this too, right? How do we help people see both sides of it, right? Like, see what's really hard, allow ourselves to feel, and yet also don't let it stop us from finding some lessons. And I think Greg and I talked
crisis equals
a lot about
opportunity,
this,
right?
about how, right, and about how many revelations are happening in 2020 for in the green space.
Yeah.
Things that without COVID, we would not be as far along with better waste management systems. We would not be as far along with people's self-awareness about what we need to do differently, right? In terms of like growing our own food, like
I think that's top of the top.
Right?
Yeah, that's COVID has pushed that to the top.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, that's sort of happening worldwide, but you know, I think that's really, you know, noteworthy when you are reliant on everything coming in. How much more does that drive? Can we get our own eggs going? Can we get a garden going? And so this, as you said, like there's been some things where people are like, okay, like I want to do something different here, or I don't want to be so dependent on things that are out of my control. And so that must be something that's kind of opening up probably some conversation. Are you finding that, Greg? Like, are you seeing some opportunities or some, you know, new ways to be able to bring this to youth and adults and people you work with?
Certainly. I think with the hurricane first, I think persons were in shock, and they were busy rebuilding. I think COVID now has brought us to the point where we are looking at growing our own food more than ever, having to be at home and looking at if there was something on the import that foods weren't able to come into the country, how much we're affected versus if we were home. What all can we do to keep ourselves fed and healthy and still have something to do? Because gardening on a whole is just a holistic growth, not just for your health, but for your well-being as well. Just being able to go outside and to farm and put your hands in the dirt and interact with the microbes.
Yeah.
It's holistic healing. And so I think COVID has pushed farming, home gardening to the top of many persons' list. People that you never thought would be farming. I'm surprised hearing persons farming and seeing pictures of what they're growing. It's shocking. It's like, and to the point is enviable. It's like, wow, to see person that you would never think would be growing their own food. Is like they're actually growing and proud of it, and they're eating the food that they're growing, and it's something to be celebrated, and it inspires you to be like, man, I have to get going. Right. And you're sensing this chain reaction from other persons who are saying, I have to start growing. I have my brother who's a marine mechanic, and he's building a greenhouse. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, I'm growing it. So you're seeing this rippling effect of persons who have, through COVID, I think more so, you're seeing persons who are like, I have to start growing my own food.
Yeah,
and also respect for others. Like I know people voice a lot how teachers, parents that are now educating their children at home, who all of a sudden go, oh my goodness, you do not get paid enough. You are not respected enough.
Seriously.
But it's the same to be said for farmers and people that do grow their own food. And the fact that it's not as simple as put this seed in the ground and, walk away. That it requires, I have to give Joanne Penney total credit for we need to care more and use less. But living a green life actually does often take a little more time than a disposable life. It takes a little more time to nurture a garden and grow your own food.
In this, do you guys, I mean, this is pretty front and center for you. This isn't like, oh, hey, like green initiatives are new. You guys know about this. This is a passion. This is something you're working for. But in it, like, has there been any new insights for you or things that now you're looking at that were kind of like moments that kind of came out of all this that were, maybe things that you've been meaning to do or things that you're getting a bit more serious on even in your own life?
Growing food. Go, Greg. Go, Greg.
Yeah. For me personally, it's like, I need to grow my own food. I'm actually finishing up my chicken cage.
Nice.
And I've been feeding the chickens in my yard and getting ready to cage them. My brother, he built his own cage, and he has a little daughter. She's about maybe a year and a half, 2 years, and they have a battery cage. He built it under his by his house, and they have a cage system, and so they collect about 7 eggs a day. And my wife she does a lot of baking, and she was just impressed, like, oh my God, Greg, we have to get a cage, because she goes to the store and buy egg. But when you see that you can get your own eggs, when you read and do studies about the new Netflix documentary that just came out, Kiss the Ground, and you see the benefit of an amazing documentary. I just watched it, and I have to rewatch it and take some more notes. But it's just inspirational to see what other people are doing across the world, and you can do the same thing here. And you can change your life. You can become healthier. You can become more one with the environment. You can do your part. And your part, even though it may seem small, it impacts other people, because you have now feeling the impact of other people green initiative in their own home circle. I'm feeling it. So before you're outside telling people about going green and what we need to do to reduce, and then you're seeing people doing their part, and it's like, wow, I need to get a part of this here as well. I need to be growing my own food. I need to be having my chicken cage built and collecting my own eggs, and doing my own little garden and growing my vegetables and being able to eat healthy and being able to have a source that could take care of myself in the case of something else in the future that we can't predict or we don't know about right now. But becoming more resilient as being a part of a healthy ecosystem. And this is what we teach. But when you see it being lived out to other person, it is very impactful and it's inspiring. And so that's one of the things that lately just for me, impacting me.
Love it. I wondered if this is a nice lead in, if you could tell me about some simple things people can do at home now to, keep sustainability, recycling, reducing, reusing, all that forefront. What are some simple things people can do, in their homes, like that are just watching today that want to do something?
Can I take this lead quick, Sarah, and just jump in here? Yeah. Soil restoration, because everybody's eating and everybody has a measure of compost in their home.
Right.
And for even at the Green VI site, we had did some soil, we did some earth movement, and we collected. We kept the soil, the topsoil, stored for future use. Persons sure the community would stop by and ask, can we have some of that soil?
Nice.
And person would come in here and collecting that soil, because we have a good much of it there on the side. And we've been saying, of course, certainly. And they have been doing home gardening. But when you look at soil restoration, you can do your own soil restoration at home. And if most person become educated about it, where your food scraps, your eggshells, you can create your own topsoil at home. Not only that, but your tree trimmings, those can be break down and put back into the soil. But when persons learn, just like they're learning home gardening, little home gardening that they could do. When you can see soil restoration, I think a lot of people, when they see the impact and the purpose of soil restoration, it's going to be the next thing that person is going to start doing, and they can start doing it. Everybody can start doing it at home.
Well, that's a
so I
great
think that's one of the leads that we can.
Right, and that's a really, I mean, that's something that we're proud of as an organization, because we started last year doing community composting workshops, and now it's going to be an even bigger thing. So in terms of simple things, anyone can reach out to us, or check out the Facebook page or the website and find out about community composting workshops, because then it takes the like unknown out of it, because everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna have rats and I'm gonna have vermin and you know, everything's gonna be, and the reality is a very simple, easily done composting doesn't attract anything. There's no smell, there's no nothing. You can also get to know your neighbors more. Like if you happen to live in a apartment building, you can figure out collaborating on a compost bin, you know, outside. It's also a fabulous way to support a local farmer. Like maybe you don't have space, but you can give your food scraps to that farmer, help them to restore more soil. And the more you dig into it, also, like, soil is actually the space where we can capture almost more carbon, you know, and what's impacting global warming and the climate crisis in something that's so accessible to us, right? Like that restoration.
Right.
So, I mean, Gregory is like spot on. Like if you take anything this year away, it's start composting. Yeah, you have to take out your trash like never. The way waste breaks down is that if you just put for the BVI, you put your plastic, your glass, and your aluminum in the recycling, that takes about 30% of what you would throw away or send to be burned. But then you take out the organics, like your food scraps and your paper, and you're getting 40 to 50% more. So now you're up to like 70 to 80% less than you used to generate in trash. And none of it smells. It's like fantastic. So that's huge.
Things that we can, you know, do now, learn from, and grow out of. So thank you so much. People can find more information at greenvi.org. Is that the best way to find both of you?
Yeah. Or the Facebook page or Instagram, you know, social media is life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we live this. I would say pretty much everybody on the Green VI team, this isn't just a job, right? Yeah. This is like, we live the message. So I know I'm fine with people WhatsApping me. I mean, I prefer they don't between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., but you know, like,
otherwise,
you know.
So much for joining me today. This is going to be so useful for people. And I'm sure you're going to get some more questions and follow up after. So thanks again for taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about dealing with uncertainty at the end. There are so many things that can be quite unsettling going on with COVID and the many natural disasters that the BVI has faced in the last couple of years. And so it is quite understandable and normal to be suffering some, you know, stress, if not anxious symptoms. And when we're looking at these anxious symptoms, it's really important to look at how we're thinking about them. So we used to think, okay, I had a thought and therefore, I had an incident and therefore I have a reaction. So something happens and we think, oh, like that's why I'm feeling bad. But it's actually something happens, we have our thoughts about that something, and then we have the reaction. And so during times like Hurricane Irma or COVID, a lot of us are having similar fears. A lot of us have had a lot of stress around it on the island. And so we're going to have similar thoughts. And so it's really important to look at our thinking. Sometimes we're looking at completely realistic things, and I think probably mostly, right? There are some real hardships and stressors economically, with your environment. There's just so many things going on. So that's a real stressor. And when we have a real stressor, we just call that problem solving. That's how we have to deal with it. So we look at the stressor, and then we look at problem solving around it. What can we do? How can we get help? What are our next steps? And that's realistic, right? So none of this is to teach us to think about our worries in a way that isn't realistic. So when we've got something concrete, we deal with it the best we can. And sometimes that's quite hard because of the challenges. But sometimes our thinking's a little off, right? And so we will have what we call cognitive distortions or unhelpful thinking styles. And that's when we're looking at something like, oh, we're 100% going to get COVID just because we were out at the grocery store. So we'd call that distorted thinking because, of course, you're not 100% going to get it, but it is a concern. So then, of course, we're going to look at problem solving. What can I do to keep safe? You know, hand washing, wearing our masks, whatever we can do, and limiting contact. But if we go out and we're very anxious to go anywhere or leave our home and we are taking those precautions, then we can really look at our thinking and say, okay, what's going on here? And we know when we're having those distorted thoughts, often when we're saying things like, I'm always, or 100%, or I never, nothing ever works out for me. These are the types of things that we go, yes, okay, I'm having a distorted thought. And so that catastrophizing or all or nothing thinking or filtering only the negative information through the news or whatever, you only remember those pieces that were scary or difficult and not the good, that's when we're doing that unhelpful thinking style that has to be challenged. And when we're looking at challenging our thoughts, there's lots of ways we can do that. So we can say to ourselves, okay, is there evidence for this thought? Is there evidence that I'm 100% going to get COVID? And there's evidence that, yes, you might get COVID, possibly, unless the rates are like 0 on island. But if there are some cases, then there's a possibility, then yes, there's some evidence. But what's the evidence against? And maybe it's that you haven't had that much contact with people, that you don't know anyone with COVID, you know, and you can go through those things. So sometimes just taking it right down to what is the evidence for and against can be helpful in challenging those runaway, ruminating thoughts. Another thing you can try is, what would you say to a friend? So perhaps you had a slow week, but otherwise your business has been doing okay, and your mind goes, right, well, it's not going to work. Like, my whole business is over, it's going to fail. Then you might want to challenge, you can say evidence for and evidence against, obviously, but you can also say, what would you say to a friend that had a slow week? And you might be a lot kinder to your friend and their business, and you might be more encouraging than sometimes we are to ourselves. So there's just a couple of things that you can do when your thoughts kind of run away. Now, the question sometimes you get is, what if there's something that I'm worried about and there's nothing I can do? And then we get to a point where we can say, okay, the thought is true, but is this thought helpful? So, for example, like, I'm going to die one day. That's absolutely true. But is it helpful to think about all the time? You know, if there's nothing I can do and I'm trying to eat well and take care of myself best I can, then this isn't a helpful thought to ruminate. So sometimes it's just asking yourselves, okay, so maybe, it's really windy and I'm concerned about hurricanes, but I can't be obsessing that there's going to be a hurricane all the time, especially if the radar's not showing anything. So I hope that's helpful in looking at how to deal with those thoughts when dealing with uncertainty. One other thing that you can think about when dealing with uncertainty is, when is there time to lean into an issue and when is there time to lean out? And fear, anxiety is actually really helpful for us. We get a lot of information from the sympathetic nervous system, which tells us when we need to be kind of on our guard, and that comes up when we're in the fight or flight mode. So let's say you're walking to a cash point, it's dark, you're going down an alley, you kind of want your wits about you, right? That's a really helpful thing. But if nothing's going on and you're just thinking about going to get money, and it's in the middle of the day and there's lots of people around, there seems to be no safety issue, but you're still going to fight or flight because you're afraid, then that's like the system going off when it doesn't need to, right? And we all have that sometimes, where things are going off and there's no need. It's kind of like that fire alarm that tells you there's smoke and that you need to deal with something. Great when that system's working, but if it's going off because you said, I'm warm in here, or someone bought a new candle and they just mentioned it, then you know it's firing for the wrong things. So that's when we're looking at really addressing our anxiety when it's gone off. And sometimes we need to take a break from thinking about such things, and sometimes we lean into them. So sometimes it might be helpful to really journal or talk to a friend or a pastor about some of the concerns you're having, or even a therapist, and really lean into it. And sometimes it might be time to lean out and take a break and just go to the beach or have a nice coffee with a friend and take a break from your worries. So that might also be something that you can do in uncertain times, is sometimes maybe it's good to lean into some worries. Again, fear is not a bad thing, and sometimes we just need to recognize what it's telling us, and then we can choose what we do with that information. And again, it can be leaning in or leaning out. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We've had a great lineup of professionals sharing their passions, their struggles, and also some great insights. If you haven't watched them all, make sure you go back and watch them now. Thanks again for watching.